Yo les petits potes à la compote, welcome to this new podcast. So today we're gonna welcoming like my first English guys in the podcast. So I'm really excited. So Christian, how are you today?
Très bien.
For the small story, these guys especially take a train this morning for come to recording this podcast here in Lyon. So really thank you for this. Just introduce yourself.
My name is Chris. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I started traveling 15 months ago. I've been moving around France and the UK, a little bit of other countries, Switzerland, Germany, but mostly that's Central Europe. I really like travel, and I don't really prescribe to the idea of staying in one place for just 2 days, take a quick photo, Eiffel Tower, and then you leave. I really like to sink into a place to understand the city or wherever I am. So that's why I haven't done so many countries in my time, but I've really tried to know more about where I've been.
Yes, but the culture, the people and everything. So how comes this idea to come in Europe? Because you can go in America, maybe you can go in Africa. Why most of the Australians choose Europe for coming?
Well, I can speak generally about Australians.
Yeah.
We have this kind of saying in Australia that when you finish school or university, you go to Europe for a few months and you find yourself. It's just, part of we like to travel.
I love Australian people because you always like smiling. You have good vibes really when you come to Europe. What do you think about European people in your country?
Oh, it's great. I think we're a country that has had so many different peoples coming throughout the years that it's very natural for me to be in a diverse group of people. So I think Australians are very welcoming to different kinds of people, and I didn't realize until I started traveling how much we have a positive reputation. I was so thankful to come into hostels and everyone was like, "Oh, you're Australian? Yeah, let's party, let's do something, let's go and chat." That was a very nice feeling because I didn't feel like I did anything. I just showed up, I said, "Yes, I'm Australian."
I'm Australian.
And it's like a free passport.
You know how to make party. I don't know the name of the drinks or the shoes. It's like the
Shui.
Australian people teach me about the shui and like some that's gross. Basically a shui, it's just you put your drinks in your shoes.
So you just get your beer, put it in your shoe, and then
that's typical. That's Australian. That's so Australian.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Australian people make this in party. You love drinks, you have good vibes, and I think this is why like European people love you, like you so much.
That's really lovely to hear. On behalf of Australians, thank you Europe for giving us this reputation.
You gonna from Australia, so it's like, what, 15 hours of plane?
Yeah, it can be up to 20 if you're stopping on the way.
So that's a long way.
Yeah.
So you come back in France in November. Why you come back and you don't stay in Australia?
Well, I actually wanted to stay in Europe the whole time, but I was asked to come home by my family. It's my grandfather's 80th birthday. My mother said, "You must come home." I said, "Okay." Otherwise, I would love to stay.
How you make for stay a long time in Europe? Do you find like volunteering or maybe a job for a visa?
Good question. I had a job for 4 years in Australia. I was working in hotels and then I was working in a school as a teacher. And during that time I just saved all my money and I lived with my family. So I had quite a lot of savings, and I also had the chance to have a European passport because my father is European. But so the visa's okay, I don't need it, and the money I saved, but you're right, traveling in Europe is not cheap, especially like Western Europe. I was finding it quite expensive, which is actually why I started doing volunteer work this year.
So what type of volunteering you have made?
Well, I've been on a cow farm, like shoveling cow poo and helping with cows giving birth to other cows.
Okay.
Which was crazy. I've done gardening for different families. I've renovated some houses. I lived in an old French fort I was there with just French people, which was really hard. For my French, it's not so good. What I've loved most actually about traveling is finding myself in situations where I look around and I don't see any other tourist. When you're in a situation where it's only local people, you just feel so privileged to be able to see this world that you wouldn't see in a guidebook or on like a Google review. So that was really special.
Yeah. So what do you think about like French culture?
French culture, there are parts of it I love and there are parts of it I don't understand. I love the food and how it's always important to have food and drink together. Like apéritif, like is such a nice kind of gathering, and the French I think are so good at just having conversations. Sometimes conversations about nothing. I'm sat down and it's just people wanting to talk, and I'm just like, okay. And I have to practice my oui, d'accord, and then all the It's a part of French language I've still not quite learned. I've really loved the history. There's such a rich history because it's been, you know, the borders have changed a little bit, but it's been like French identity for so many hundreds of years that you see the buildings and like the ruins from different places and you hear about so much history. I really enjoy that. And I love how proud French people are of their culture. Sometimes it is very intense and they feel like they have to die to protect their, you know, my wine is the best or my croissants are the best. But in general, I love that passion, and it's something we don't have a strong identity with in Australia because in Western ideas, our country is still quite young. You know, white people only started building Western civilization like 200 years ago. So I've learned a lot from France about its history, and I love how they always want to just have a good life and have fun. You know, it could be COVID, could be strikes from the farmers, it could be like the mayor trying to do things for the Olympics. Like if there's a crisis, French people will come out and say, no, we want to have a good life. I really admire that because
that's French. Which is the part you don't like in France?
The part I find difficulty with is the separation between the different French identities is very strong, and I think sometimes they clash with each other. Like I know that there's this idea that Paris and the Parisians are very different to the rest of France.
That's not sometimes, that's always.
That's always. And the French language is difficult as an English speaker because of all the letters that I don't pronounce in the words. That can be frustrating, but it's their country, so I try to always play the game and say, okay, we do it this way, it's fine.
When you go in the country, you go in big city, people is exhausting and everything about life, but it speak English. And when you go in the countryside, people are really welcoming but don't speak English. So do you think it's like really hard for a foreigner to go in the countryside of France to be understandable if you don't speak too many French?
I don't think it's as difficult as perhaps people think. I know that not being understood, not being able to communicate is very scary, especially if you're a solo traveler and you're in a place that you don't feel familiar. But my experience is that most of the time you can survive on some really basics. You don't have to know like all the words, and a lot of the time like charades can help, you know, miming gestures. It's definitely challenging, but I would encourage people to still try because the reward for getting off the most traveled parts of the map is really unique experiences that you will never forget. Quick story, one of my closest friends now is a French guy I met using BlaBlaCar. So he was my first BlaBlaCar driver, and he took me from Paris to a city called Montluçon. We just had a great conversation, and his English was pretty good. My French was terrible, but he played some Coldplay, which is one of my favorite bands. And I was like, okay, this person, we can't, you know, tell each other everything, but we both love this music. And then afterwards, he said, we had a nice conversation, and he offered for me to stay at his house when I had finished my volunteering. And so we did, and we had dinner, and he made me this friendship bracelet, and now we're buddies. So things like that, you're just very spontaneous. You know, I didn't plan that, and it just kind of happens. But I think you have to bring that energy. If you come somewhere and you're like, you don't trust people, you're very shy, so, you know, it has to start with you.
Yeah.
And I know that can be difficult because people, you know, so many days they're on their phones and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's getting harder to connect with people in the real world, you know?
Especially now with all the social media and everything.
I love how Europe is really trying to make things walkable, to make public transport affordable, and cycling. I've done so much cycling in Europe and I love it. It's so fun. Just renting the bikes or the scooters and going through the city. It's some of the best sightseeing you can do.
You travel most of the time in hostel?
Most of the time, yeah.
So how do you make for find hostel?
I really like the apps, Hostel World. I think it's good to find a deal. Sometimes I'll use Hostel World to search hostels, but you can also sometimes get a cheaper price if you go directly to their website. So I do that too. But what I love about Hostel World, and not many people use it, I find, is the chats, the communication. But I think it's a great way if you're having trouble finding people to connect with, just send a message. Just say, hey, I'm in Lyon for 2 nights. Anyone want to get a drink? And most of the time, someone will say, yeah, okay. And then you get Instagram or WhatsApp, and then, yeah, you make... I've had some really fun, kind of spontaneous gatherings where it started 2 people, and then suddenly you have 8 people, and you're all going to the park for a picnic, or you're all going to the lake for a swim, where it's just, you know, someone says, oh, do you want to come? Do you want to come? I think people in hostels, my experience is they're just waiting to be involved, and no one wants to miss out. You know, FOMO is such a big thing for this generation. No one wants to feel like they're not going to the cool party. So if you invite people, most of the time they just say, yeah, okay, I'll come. Hard to take the leap. I think if you're the person to take the leap, then people will say yes. But I've seen so many people in hostels just sit there on their phone and they look around and they're waiting for someone to come up to them, but they can't do it themselves. They have to wait.
If I'd like to give some advice, so just be free to make what you want. It's understandable sometimes you don't want to make an activity. We both know, and we all know, like, travel is really exhausted and sometimes we just need some rest. Question about hostel. We always, in every culture, in every country, in every place, we have the non-spoken rules.
People need to know, because I've stayed in some hostels where people didn't know and I wanted to like shout at them, say, how could you do that? I think the big thing is hygiene, especially for solo male travelers. We are probably the biggest culprit of bad hygiene. So if you have smelly shoes, keep them outside. I don't want to see this like in the middle of the room and you open the door and you can just, yeah, it's so gross. Toilets and showers, just an easy rule. I feel like we all learned this as a child. You leave it how you found it, maybe even a little bit better. If you can just take some toilet paper and wipe the seat or just put the soap back, it would be so much more appreciated, I think. In general, I think the rooms should be quiet space for chill out and for sleeping. So if you want to stay there, read, it's fine. But if you want to have a conversation with people you met, go to the lounge or the bar or outside or whatever. Don't stay in the room. I think it's really rude when someone's trying to sleep and people are having a conversation. I don't like when people exclude others. I think you never know who you're gonna meet, and it's so easy to judge people just by looking at them, say, oh, he's got tattoos, he's got a mustache, I don't want to talk with him, he's a weird guy. But I think you just need to be open to everyone, because I've been excluded from groups before and it feels terrible.
Yeah.
And I would never want to make someone feel that way. So even if it's like, you know, you've already got 7 people, this guy's in the corner, I think just, you know, if the invitation is open, let everyone be involved. It's always nice to connect with more people.
Okay, that's cool. That's the non-spoken rule of the hostel. Just don't switch the lights when you come in the room and it's the night.
Ah, yes,
use your phone
Yeah, or a head torch.
Yeah.
Just buy a head torch.
But a lot of people don't have head torch. I always have head torch when I travel.
Yeah.
Because like hopla, you put like the red lights.
Yes, the red light one. So good. This saves my life. Because you can do all your stuff and you're not annoying people.
When you know you're gonna leave earlier in the morning, like at 4, 5 or 6 in the morning, please just make your bag night before. It's so exhausting to just like at 6 a.m. heard all the dipper like, and the guys like just searching when I put this, and just slap the door. Don't make this.
Yeah.
Just make your bag before. Stay people sleep. If you have like some other non-spoken rules, just let this in comments. So you're a backpacker. What do you put on your bag?
It depends on the length of my trip. I've got a few different backpacks. Hiking pack is being great for multiple weeks, up to a month maybe with a hiking pack. I love to have my hands free. I think that's so helpful. If you're backpacking in Europe, you need to have something that you can carry. Hands free on your back. You can have the one on your front as well if you need an extra bag, but don't drag anything because it's just gonna make troubles for you. But I would say most people know this already, but packing cubes are just so great. Or any kind of bag. So you just know, this is my clean clothes, this is my toiletries, and then it's so easy to put things in and take things out. I don't understand people that just mix it all together. It's like, every time you have to organize your room and it's a mess. Having just like a spare bag that you can just tuck away, just so handy for like random shopping, or you buy too many like souvenirs and you're like, oh, I need to put more things, or at the train station. Also at hostels, be really nice to just like hang it on your bunk and then it's just easy in and out. So I always carry just a spare bag. You never know when someone will say, do you need a bag? And it's like, nope, I got one, I'm fine.
Yeah, because bag in France, it's like not free.
No.
You paid for a bag. If you go to make groceries, if you go to make shopping.
These ones, the dry bag, especially for laundry.
Yeah.
If you're traveling for a long time, you just put your clothes in, put some soap, shake it, leave it 10 minutes, rinse it out. So I've done so much laundry with this in sinks, in showers, because yeah, doing a machine, it costs so much and it takes so much time. So I met a New Zealand guy, a Kiwi, who used like the Flixbus, and he was just sitting on the bus and they made a stop and someone just took his bag and ran away. And so he lost his laptop, passport, all this kind of shit. So I would say if you have valuables and you're taking a bus or a train, always hold them. Yeah, keep them, don't put them in the luggage area.
When you have some valuable stuff with you, laptop, camera, passports, ID, bank card and everything, just keep the stuff with you. Even if you take the plane, take all your valuable stuff with you, because you never know. If you lost stuff like clothes, laundry, toiletries, that's good, you can buy another one. But it's like more difficult if you lose your ID, your passport, your laptop. It's like, shit.
Ciao.
Always with you.
Absolutely.
Always. What do you make for being more responsible about the tourism and ecotourism?
I think, yeah, you kind of have to accept when you become a traveler that your carbon footprint is going to be a lot bigger than if you were staying in one place, because you're using a lot of transport, you're using a lot of single-use food if you're eating out a lot, like packaging and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely not the most ecological thing to do with your time, and I try and remember this. But I think there are small things you can do to definitely make it less impactful on the environment. So I try as much as I can to use the trains, although they can be expensive. So my new favorite is using the coach, Flixbus, BlaBlaCar. Hitchhiking, yeah, I've also used, is great and cheap.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're asking people just to trust you. And then also just like really paying for less souvenirs. You see cool things, you're like, oh wow, I wouldn't get this at home. It's like little magnet or something, but it's just stuff, man. There's just so much stuff.
So you talk about memories. Do you buy memories for your family when you come back?
Not really. I feel like the memories that I share with them are like the stories and sometimes I might find one special thing if it's handmade or I know I can't get it anywhere else in the world. That appeals to me, but I don't need a magnet to tell my mom I went to Lyon, you know? I can show her a photo. So I think, yeah, the souvenirs is a personal thing. I just feel that they're not necessary. And if you're backpacking, you don't have space for all that shit, man. You gotta make some hard choices about when you're buying things and when you're not. And you look at this little thing and you say, do I really want to carry this for 3 weeks? In my bag, out my bag, in my bag. It's like, is that really worth it? That's just a couple of things I do.
Maybe if you like to buy memories for your family, your friends, I know it's like understandable, just make on your last day. I know like some people buy some clothes and just send everything by the post. Do you make this?
I've never done that, no. You said when you meet other Australians, sometimes if I know an Australian is from my city, I say, hey, can you take something home for me? So I've done that, but I've never sent it by the post.
What's your next plan? So you go back in Australia for your grandfather's birthday?
I come back and...
You stay in France or maybe you try to go in another country? Which country you would like to go?
So my plan is to go do Germany and Denmark. I've heard Copenhagen is amazing. And then, yeah, my plan after that is to spend the winter in Switzerland.
Okay.
I'm gonna be a ski bum, so doing the ski school teaching.
So you can make money when you travel.
It's time to actually have a job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be the longest that I stay in one place. So I'll be there for 6 months the whole winter.
So do you have something more to tell?
Go and travel, because I think life is the best teacher. And if you travel, you will definitely learn something. Spend your money on experiences, spend your time with people, and, you know, be a good person.
Thank you for this. Don't hesitate to like, sharing everything. You can find this on YouTube in video formats, on in audio in specialized platform, also in social media. Stay in touch. Thank you and au revoir.